Aloha. I'm Desmond Hakias, and I'm in Hawaii on the island of Kauai. Today I'll be sharing about overcoming loss of a loved one. I want to begin first with a story. Back in 2001, 11 days after the September 11th event in America, in the world, I called home to speak to my mother. However, my younger sister, Kiala, answered the phone, and we just had a brief conversation, just seeing what her plans were. I was sick that day, and she was getting ready to go out to dinner. And then we said goodbye. I don't recall if I had said, I love you. I really can't remember. Well, later on that evening, I could hear someone calling my name through my window. And they said, Desi. That's my nickname. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Desmond Hakias. And I heard through my window while I'm sleeping, Desi, open the door. And I'm like, open the door? Like, Desi, open the door. And I was like, okay. Because I was living in an apartment with roommates. And so I opened the door. When I opened the door, the news that I received, I never in my worst nightmare would ever happen. And they said, it was my sister and my brother-in-law. And they said, Desi, Kiala, my sister, our little sister, she died from being in a car accident. And I was like, no, she's fine. I just spoke to her today. She's fine. She's okay. And at that moment, just felt like my heart got shattered in a gazillion pieces, and I didn't want to accept that reality. And we go to my brother's house, and I'm like, is she okay? They offer for me to call home because we were living in another Hawaiian island. And I called my mother, and you can hear my mom just sobbing and sobbing. And I tried to talk to my dad. My auntie jumped on the phone, and in our own language, it's called pidgin language. It's broken English. I said, "Is Allah okay?" And she said that she was gone. And everything up until that point just changed. Everything. And so, overcoming loss of a loved one. How do you deal with that? The first thing I can share, this year makes 19 years since my sister died from being in a vehicle accident, is to be patient with yourself. There is so many things that go on in our lives, and as much as we can plan out our days, our months, our years, project it ahead, our goals for our family and for our businesses, the unexpected will come. I didn't plan for my sister to die. And so it's important to be patient with yourself. Your mind, your body is having to adapt and to accept this change. And it's not easy. I've always been someone who is very determined, growing up, experiencing difficulties, dealing with verbal abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. I learned growing up how to just persevere and to be resilient and to fight to see what was positive. in this instant, although my faith was in God, it was tested. It's like, this doesn't feel like love. This isn't what I signed up for. But that is life. And so, overcoming a loss, be patient with yourself and be patient with the people that are in your life. You can go through the same experience with your family and your friends, and each of you will interpret and respond differently. Some people will take months, will take years, take lifetime to process this change, this loss, whereas other people, you'll feel like, did you go through what I went through? Because they just maybe don't cry, or they refuse to talk about what happened. But when we all grieve, it's a personal journey. And depending how close you are to that person, each and every one of us is gonna receive it and deal with it according to our coping skills and what works for us. But nonetheless, we still need to do what we need to do to process the loss and adapting our lives to the new normal without physically having that person in our life, although they're always with us spiritually. A tip for dealing with loss that I found that has been very helpful is music and art. I think sometimes when people are grieving, depending on how the person passed away, if it was a tragic event, a tragic accident, or maybe it was their health declining, they had cancer, if maybe like for my grandmother, her kidneys were failing and she was 82 years old by that point, we will process it differently. And so it's important for us to allow the emotions that come with dealing with our sadness, dealing with our anger, just allowing the emotions to come through. The reason why music is everything and it's helpful is people who do music, who write song lyrics, and the artists that convey it, the producers, they are sharing a story through music. And sometimes it's harder for us to process our own lives and what's going on with our own lives. But a particular song, a particular music group, a particular singer has learned to be in tune with their hearts, with their lives, and they're able to convey it in music in ways that you would never know, and it gives you permission to do the same. When you hear someone express sadness, anger, or whatever emotion that you're having difficulty associating with, identifying with, it gives you permission to do the same. I have two dads. My mom remarried, and my father, back in 2012, unfortunately, he was in an accident, a vehicle-related accident, not in the same manner as my sister. And he had to be medevaced from one Hawaiian island to another hospital. And I was able to fly over and to see him and to express my love and goodbye, although he died in less than 24 hours. There's this song that's helped me throughout the years. It's by Luther Vandross, and it's called Dance with My Father. And when I hear the song and when I sing the song, it helps me to identify the sadness that we can feel. The song talks about how the moment when he, like, crying, and how he wished he could take away, like, the pain for his mom, because he can hear her crying through the door. And that was like, I can feel that way. Internally, I'm really sad. I really miss my dad. Externally, life just seems to just go on. Like, people just keep going, and a lot of times we don't feel we have the ability to cry, to process, and to accept the changes in our lives. And so music has given me permission to cry. Maybe it's in the shower, so at least when I cry, it's like I'm already wet and the tears, flows, and my body, it just feels refreshed, and I can just carry on my day. But it's not something that I'm doing outside of my work schedule or being around my son or my family. And so music is powerful in allowing us to grieve. And because we are able to feel the pain and the sadness, the anger, whatever comes with that person that we're missing and we love, you are able to swing the pendulum to the opposite side of feeling happiness, of feeling joy, a desire to connect with people. Whereas our tendency when we're grieving, we can just isolate ourselves and feel so alone, and allow our sadness to make us not feel we're good enough to be around, or that we can relate to people because we're just sad. But in actuality, we all are gonna die. And it's our reality. And so if we can just open our hearts to allowing people to be a part of the process of our grief journey, it gives them insight. If they've never lost someone, it gives them insight to prepare that one day they will die, their parents, grandparents, maybe their brother, sister, their child will die, and they will die. And so grief becomes normalized, and it doesn't become something that's far-fetched. And by you sharing your journey on grief, it allows people to mentally, emotionally, physically prepare for what's to come. It's part of life. Lastly, it's important when you're on your grief journey to do what makes you happy every day. Last year, my last grandparent, my grandmother, a cancer survivor, she almost died a couple years ago. She ended up having to be medevaced from one island to another Hawaiian island to get the pacemaker. And So last year she went into hospice care, and it was hard because that was my best friend. And I I remember telling her, like, I don't know what to do because being a caretaker is a lot. Whew, I don't need to cry. And I could see that my mother, who's her main caretaker, was starting to experience burnout. And I remember talking to my grandmother, like, I don't know what to do because I was out of job. I'd been there for almost 3 years, and it was difficult. I was trying to make it work, but there was personal stuff. Not the job itself was great. It's just there was like an environment that wasn't beneficial for my health, and I kept getting sick. And so I felt maybe I should just resign and focus on taking care of her because she was about to transition into hospice care. And my grandmother, 82 years old, looks at me and she said, Desi, you have to do what makes you happy. Because in the end, you can't blame no one. And I just cried and cried. When you're a people pleaser, you tend to put aside your happiness. You do technically what is right by your parents or society's standard of success, even if it goes against you. And so, of course, I cried because I felt it was unfair. Like, it's easy for you to say that, Grandma. Like, I didn't tell her this, but I thought, it's easy for you to say that. You're my grandma, you're elder. You don't have to deal with people in my life if I make the wrong decision. So after I cried and I reflected, thought about it, I remember in 2013 when her husband, my grandfather, died, the day before he passed, I said, Papa, it's okay. You can go now. We'll take care of Grandma. And he shook his head. He couldn't even open his eyes. He had fought so hard against cancer. And his body just was like done. And he shook his head. He said, no. And I was like, gosh, my grandpa doesn't even trust us that we can take care of her. And so I decided to resign from my job because I wanted to keep my promise to my grandfather. And I wanted to be able to help relieve the responsibilities on my mother completely because she needed it. This is her third parent that would be in hospice care in her home, and she had to go through it, and I wanted to alleviate that stress. And so basically, that is something that I took to heart. Do what makes you happy. That is a decision I don't regret. My grandmother ended up living way longer than hospice had expected her to live. She went into hospice care in March. She was able to go to Las Vegas, Nevada with the family and to go visit her sister and celebrate her 80th birthday. And then she died in September. If you do what makes you happy, even in the midst of grief and processing your new normal without someone who you absolutely love and who absolutely loves you. I mean, maybe it's hard to find someone like that in this, like now. If you do what makes you happy, you'll attract people that do the same. And it's healthy for you to slow down if you have to, and even make life decisions, whether it's a career change. Maybe you realize, now is the time that I'm gonna start that business, or now is the time I'm gonna pick up the guitar. Now is the time that I'm going to give myself permission to do what I've been afraid to do because of people's judgment of who I am and what I'm about to do. So when my grandmother, the year before my grandmother passed away, I'm still grieving. My dad died in 2012. My grandpa died in 2013. And it's 2018. I struggle with anxiety. I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after my sister died back in 2006. Dwayne Johnson is one of my favorite actors. Well, he is my favorite actor. And I heard there was a movie casting call back in 2018. I've never been in a movie. And I just wanted to see him. I'm like, I just want to see him. And I remember trying. I went for the movie casting. He didn't show up. But I went anyways. There ended up being about 1,000 people who tried out for the casting. And I was able to be a background actress on my first movie. It's a Disney movie. It's called Jungle Cruise. It was supposed to release last year. It got pushed back to this year, but because of the pandemic, it got pushed back to next year. So anyways, I got to be in that movie. Anxiety, a lot of anxiety, but I showed up, got in. Anxiety, but I kept showing up because that's what made me. And I got to see him. I didn't get to talk to him, but I got to see him. The next year, my grandmother goes into hospice care. Opportunity comes up to be in a second movie. It was the Fast and the Furious spinoff. Hobbs and Shaw. I have to dress up. I end up wearing my grandmother. I needed to dress a certain year, like I think it was like throwback. So I borrowed one of my grandmother's shirts. And so I got to be in the movie, and then the movie came out last year in July. She was still alive, and I remember, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you fear success and you fear failure. But I'm going to tell you, you take baby steps and you go towards it, even scared. I did the second movie, and I remember telling my grandmother, oh, I have to go to do the outfit, to try on the outfit. And then, just sharing with her my experience with the Disney movie, and then sharing with her with the second movie with Hobbs and Shaw. It brought her so much joy, and I'll forever have that memory. I was in a movie, and the shirt that I was wearing was her shirt. So it's something that is special. And I learned that when you do what makes you happy, you, in essence, carry on people's legacy. Sorry. Ugh. The people who love you, that you miss, that want you to be happy, they still want you to be happy. They don't desire for you to be sad the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. I don't know how many more years you have left. They want you to be happy. And so, excuse me. That is what I've learned with overcoming losses. Life consists of moments, and your moments become your memories. And it's all little decisions that add up to bigger decisions. And I just wanted to remind you to be patient with yourself, to lean into music, and art to process your emotions and feelings because it's healthy. Um, it's normal to cry, to be happy, to be sad, to be angry, to feel numb. And as my 82-year-old grandma told me, do what makes you happy. It may not make sense to your family, your friends, but it makes you happy. Sometimes in life, we can be doing something, but we don't step back to really reflect and ask, am I happy with the job I'm doing, with the time I'm investing in what I'm doing? Am I happy with my relationships? When you go through grief, it helps you to step back and decide what really is important and what isn't, and it allows you permission to shift your values, to shift your life, and to and to do what is necessary for you to be happy, and to teach your family and your friends to do the same. Because life is short. It's like a blink of an eye. You cannot rewind time, and tomorrow's not promised to you. Today is maybe what you don't know. Today may be your last day. But you can be kind, you can be loving, you can show aloha, you can make a difference in someone's life, and in doing so, you give them permission to do the same. So thank you so much for this time. Allow overcoming your loss to change you, to transform you, and to make decisions that will not only matter to you, but will change the lives of many to come. Aloha.